Welcome to the Treachery of Data podcast, the companion podcast for the CRO Roundtable. Bite-sized chunk of content summarizing a recent topic that we've discussed at the roundtable. All right, so this week we're going to get into a really common question that people ask all the time within the CRO space, and that is how to deal with low/no traffic and what can you do there in terms of like testing, experimentation, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So this is going to be a good listen for obviously anybody with low traffic who is testing or is considering it. Like you have, a new startup or a new website that you're rolling out for a new brand, landing pages, et cetera, et cetera. Those are just a couple examples, but it can totally run the gamut. All right. So, why don't you get into sort of an explanation of the problem first? Like, why is having low traffic an issue in an experimentation program?
Yeah. So sometimes it can be low traffic even on a high traffic site. So I think kind of
True. Like there's context to consider there, right?
yeah. So I know that there's been occasions where I've been because my previous job I was kind of dealing with a lot of traffic, like millions users per day. So even on that site, there'll be pockets or specific areas of the site where the traffic would be very low. So if you're testing on those sort of areas, then you do come across some issues, the same issues as with low traffic and no traffic,
Right.
which
It depends
is
on your targeting. Yeah. Like
yeah,
you're not always running every test on the entirety of the traffic that your site collects. Like if you're running a test on one single landing page, then your sample size is only traffic comes to that landing
yeah.
page. It's not everybody on the site. Yeah.
Yeah. And the key thing was the sample size that you
Mhm.
mentioned there. So this is why it's an issue because if
Yeah.
your sample size is really small and if your conversion rate is really small, and we've done a previous video I think where we talked about MDEs, minimal
Mhm.
detectable effects. So basically, what we're looking for is enough volume of traffic, enough volume of conversions in order to get a statistical significance, in order to get a read on our test.
Yeah.
So if traffic is low, we have this a sample size issue.
So
Um,
I get sort of like a more accurate way to describe the problem would be like dealing with low sample size rather than dealing with low traffic. Like just saying traffic kind of creates some confusion there.
yeah. And also in terms of like we're not going to get too deep into the statistical side of things.
No, that's not. Yeah.
That's not what our goal is. But the one thing that I will say is that there is now and again a lot of chatter on LinkedIn about this, and I'll link to a post where there's this where this view that you need 240,000 visitors if we're being strict with testing in order to be able to test. So um, that we'll get into a little bit more, but I don't agree with that. Like we shouldn't be too strict, but that's something that we'll discuss.
Yeah, saying like there's a hard cutoff of like, oh, you need this much in order to be able to do CRO or experimentation at all is a
Yeah,
misnomer,
yeah.
right?
That's just
Yeah,
wrong in my view.
yeah.
So,
And
well, that's not the way that I roll.
right.
Yeah,
And one thing to get into there right off the bat is that CRO isn't just experimentation. So, like,
exactly. Yeah,
if you're dealing with low sample sizes as a result of, low traffic or strict targeting that's reducing the sample size of your, valid, user base for the test, there are other things that you can do beyond experiment running experiments. There are other ways to identify problems and validate hypotheses there. Spend more time on user research, um, and pre-test research. So now, what do we mean by pre-test
So now
research?
we're getting into the solutions. So I just
Right.
wanted to point out,
Oh,
just
sorry. Did I jump ahead too far?
no, no, no,
Because that's the
it's
part
fine.
that I want to talk about.
No, this is great. This is a point that we wanted to talk about, but just to highlight to everybody listening or everybody watching that, yeah, we're gonna now delving into the solution section. So, you know, you do have low traffic. What do we do about it? So yeah, yeah, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, basically, the answer is not, well, you just can't do CRO, right? No, that's not the answer.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, so, lean into planning and qualitative testing instead, rather than trying to do, a traditional A/B test. Get into, more heavily invest in the research side of CRO, so doing surveys, user testing.
yeah.
um no, getting into some other, user research methodologies. I covered a couple. What are some of your go-tos or other ideas there?
Yeah, I think the key thing is that A/B testing is just a validation method. So,
Right.
anything where you're essentially validating um, some change or some hypothesis or assumption that you've got, that's the spirit of CRO. So yeah, I mean things you mentioned, surveys, user tests, other user research methodologies, and the key thing is that when you've got low traffic, you'll have a percentage of time that's spent on research before your test, delving into the data before you actually build a test or run tests. So you probably be spending more time in the research, and the tests that you do test will be, you'll be testing fewer tests probably, but doing much more research. Some of the other data related stuff you can do before you actually run tests, text analysis, so reviewing customer reviews and stuff like that, doing heuristic and UX audits on the site, usability testing, competitor analysis.
How are your competitors doing things on their site? Like,
Yeah,
looking at their UX, what's their user journey? What are their products versus your products? What's their target audience? Etcetera. Same thing. Also, instead of, comparing against competitors, compare against other industry peers as
yeah,
well. Like,
yeah,
people who are also in your space, but maybe tangentially related, not specifically like your direct competitors.
yeah. And then obviously there's the old pre and post test. So you basically launch something and then you check what the difference is. But all of those have been kind of non A/B testing related.
Right.
But in terms of going into the A/B testing,
Well, there's one other little bit here, and that's because the sample size that you're dealing with is smaller. Qualitative data that you're getting off of that is probably more valuable because it's a less diverse audience. Think about, um 5 survey results from 100 people versus 5 survey results from 1,000 people, or 5 survey results from 100,000 people. 5 survey results from out of 100,000 people, like, that's a very tiny pinprick of the universe of that sample. So that is probably much less representative, right? And now you're getting into, representative sample size and calculations and things like that, right? So smaller the universe, probably the more valuable your
yeah, that's a
qualitative information is.
really good point actually. That's a really good shout out because yeah, the smaller sample size means
Yeah, it's
distribution.
going to be more meaningful data
Yeah,
because it's probably more broadly applicable across the entire sample.
yeah. Awesome. So yeah, so very. This is the only section we're going to get into the stats, probably a
Yeah.
little bit.
So this is a good segue.
Yeah. So when it comes to actually A/B testing, then, because we've been talking about other user research and data methods before A/B testing, so actual A/B testing with low traffic, there is this rule, like this is where the 240,000 users that you need as a sample size to test comes in. There's certain statistical benchmarks they typically need to reach, something like, for instance, having power of 80%. There's statistical significance, which usually people like to set to 95%, but there
Can set
are
it
ways
lower.
of massaging those
Yeah.
to reduce the certainty level.
Now you need to understand like what is happening if you're, adjusting those values up or down. Like you can't just be like, "Oh, we have like a small sample size, so we're going to accept like 60% statistical significance and be okay with it." Like, "Oh, well, what does that actually mean if you're reducing your significance threshold?"
Yeah, and actually, even if you're reducing it just by a little bit, when it comes to saying, "Oh, we have proven without a shadow of a doubt that this effect caused this effect," so basically, you just need to take away the fact that that level of certainty is reduced by you reducing these, massaging these numbers.
You can't say
Um,
beyond a shadow of a doubt regardless, but if you're reducing your significance level, you
You
really
definitely
can't
can't.
say that.
You definitely can't say that, yeah. So basically, I think that your whole approach to testing needs to change a little bit. So you need to shift from, I mean, not only do you like the types of things that you're testing, you're going to be testing much bigger things or much more
Yeah,
prominent things, like we mentioned before. You'd be doing much more data research to make sure that anything that you do test will likely have either a positive or a negative impact, will
yeah.
likely be a lever to shift some of the metrics that you're looking at.
Essentially, like, you're sacrificing certainty
Yeah.
overall, and you're either doing that by reducing the significance level, um, or increasing the test duration while still being realistic about it. Like, you can't be like, I mean, like, if the if you say, "We have to accept a 95% statistical threshold no matter what," and, like, you set your, like, reasonable MDE threshold at, like, 5%, which is even still pretty kind of generous, and the numbers say, "Oh, well, you gotta run the test for 9 months." Is it reasonable to run a test for 9 months? Probably not.
Yeah.
So, like, you have to be like, "Okay, that's, like, okay, just running the test longer isn't gonna work. We're gonna have to do something else." Like, you're either gonna have to accept less certainty there, or another thing, and we didn't cover this yet, is changing the primary metric of importance that you're tracking with the experiment. Like, for example, running tests on e-commerce sites using, like, revenue order conversion rate, because that's the bottom metric that's most
Uh,
directly
we're gonna
tied to
we're gonna get to that
performance.
in a section below, I think. But
Okay,
yeah,
okay. Well,
the
then let's lead into that then.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
the test duration is a really key point that you
Mhm.
mentioned there as well, because yeah, you'd be not only running fewer tests and spending more time on user research, but you'd be running tests for much longer. So you shouldn't. So you should just get prepared to do that. So that's a really good call out there.
Yeah. Figure out, like, what's the upper limit of reasonability for running tests on your
Yeah.
site. Like, hey, is that data gonna be useful 9 months from now? Probably not. Is it useful 2 months from now, like 8 weeks later? Mm, maybe. Now you're starting to, like, find a balance there.
The other thing that I think is going to be important to do is to shift the focus of the testing program, and also of the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
C-suite and stakeholders.
This is what I was hinting at.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
shifting the focus from being conversion related to being much more learning related. So much more focusing much more on the insights that you're getting from tests. And so basically, what you'd want to do is to discuss this with the stakeholders and present a plan and build that bridge between how insights lead to your conversion goals,
Right.
because you're not leaving the conversion goals behind. What we're doing is we're wanting to look to closer metrics to determine the end sort of focus end goal. So, and also be able to steer the ship with some really decent, good sort of insights that you're gathering. So you get
Yeah.
a value out of that.
Right. Like you're looking at and you're saying like, okay, at the stage that we're at, we can't run experiments to reasonably determine if we're affecting this metric yet. There's just not enough, sample there for us to be able to reasonably ascertain if we're impacting that metric or not.
Yeah.
Using my example of like an e-commerce site, like if you're getting, like one order a week or something like that, like a really small number. Like there's just not enough there to see if you're moving the needle. So maybe you need to move up funnel and be like, okay, we can't reasonably determine if we're affecting order conversion rate, but what's a metric that's higher up in the funnel that we could look at? Like maybe if we're increasing add to cart rate, like maybe that has an effect where it's like, okay, we're getting people add into the cart. And so maybe that increases our abandoned cart campaign output, which will eventually lead to more orders or something along those lines, right? So it's another way of accepting less certainty, but still being able to execute.
Yeah, and also even looking closer still to that, there's what you're effectively wanting to do is track more behavioral metrics and
Mhm.
see how behaviors are being shifted. So, um, Ronnie Kohavi in his book for trustworthy experiments, he mentions the concept of an OEC, overall evaluation criterion, and so taking that sort of model on, you basically want to not necessarily want to take on one conversion metric or one behavioral metric that you think is going to be better, like an indicator of overall conversion, but instead you want to be looking at a collection of metrics that describe the user behavior on your site. And to do that, and this is something that I've been working on recently with some clients, you might want to run some experiments to collect more interaction events from users on the pages on the sites that you're running tests on. And once you collect those interaction events, what you're trying to see is what pattern of behavior is indicative to an increase in conversion. And then you want to be tracking, looking at those, not
Mhm.
necessarily forgetting about conversion, but knowing that you probably wouldn't reach significance on conversion, but you want to be tracking on the
You're
closer.
painting the whole picture. And this is a
Yeah,
good idea in general, not just for like low traffic sites. Like
absolutely. Yeah.
any like almost every test that you should be tracking multiple goals, right? You have at least the way that I do it, and I'm sure I've explained this many times before. You have some sort of primary metric of business importance, some primary metric of user importance. So business importance is like this is the thing that like is a focus of like improving this, make is a benefit to the business. And then the user behavior metric is what is the user behavior that we're directly trying to, affect with the test. And then there's secondary metrics and guardrail metrics within there. Secondary metrics are typically like things in between those 2 points or tangentially related activities, and then guardrails are like, here's things that you wanna observe to make sure that you're not harming as a side effect of the
Yeah.
experiment, right?
Because if you're looking at conversion metrics and conversion goals, there's a step that happens before that, which is something that's not tracked in, it's not directly tracked anyway in any analytics program, and that's intent, users' intent. So, users' intent will likely change as they're on the site. They'll go from either low or medium intent to high intent to then going into the funnel. So what you're effectively trying to do with all of these other behavioral metrics is to kind of determine, or even like, maybe write down a rule set,
Mhm.
determine high intent users, and then use that as a guiding stick, to kind of guide your experiment results and your experiment program. Um, and in terms of like the whole, like, yes, you should be doing that definitely, regardless of whether you're running experiments on low traffic sites or high traffic sites. But you'd probably be the percentage of time they're spending on creating these metrics will probably be more, I would imagine, the lower the traffic is.
Yeah, well, it's just like any analytics, like, if you're setting up Google Analytics, you don't just install it on the site, right? You have to, you know, define, okay, what are your events of importance and make sure you're tracking those within this. It's yeah, it's just like any other telemetry,
Yeah.
configuration.
Yeah, but what I mean is like one pattern that I've noticed when I'm kind of running experiments is the higher traffic sort of sites, the higher traffic areas of a site, you tend to need to track less of the conversion, like what did users do here, what did users there, the granular sort of user behaviors. Those are not as those are the things that could probably um, you could probably deprioritize in order to go quicker when you've got high traffic because you can see whether or not conversion is being impacted.
Yeah,
But the
yeah.
lower traffic you have, then the more those granular metrics become important, and because you can't rely on those other metrics further down the funnel. So you have to build all of these and have to focus on those granular metrics closer to the user and closer to the user's behavior and also closer to the test area that you're the test that you're working on.
Yeah, there's contextual usefulness based on the maturity of your program.
Mm.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
good deal. Anything else to cover today?
yeah, some of the other things to cover, and this is uh, again jumping into the stats a little bit, is one more thing about the tracking metrics closer to you, and also the metrics further from you. Overall, is the Z score is paying attention to the Z score. So this is something that Tim Stewart showed me, and it's been really really useful actually because even if you've got low traffic, if your the metric for that Z score is positive 3.5 and above, negative 3.5 or below, and the Z score, by the way, is the difference between the two means using standard deviation as a metric of measurement. So between your control and your variation, the the distance between the two means using standard deviations as your unit. So that if it goes above 3.54 or below -4, then that's you can determine like this is a high magnitude impact. So you can, in those instances, um, uh, take those reads and investigate further why those things are happening.
Very good. Well, As always, if you have questions, feedback, or disagree with something we said and want to get into it, you can always talk to me and Iqbal every Friday at the CRO Roundtable, which you can find at conversionworld.co/events/the weekly CRO Roundtable. If you sign up for Conversion World, it's pretty easy to find the links in there. If you're shy or you don't like speaking, you can always connect with us on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.